Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Locke and Key Season 2, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's start off with the fact that we finally kind of get insight into understanding Aaron's situation. So there was a cleaning lady at the Key house, I guess after Rendell and Duncan and his family moved out at the time, which we still haven't really touched on a lot of the time between the beginning of the series as well as them leaving Key House and everything behind. Why? I mean, Aaron stayed in Matheson, Ellie stayed in Matheson, so we really never, obviously Mark and Rendell wanted to get as far away, but they didn't, so that's interesting. But regardless, it seems like Erin came here when she was younger, 23 years ago, and she was inside of her head at the time, but the lady that was cleaning up was like, what's going on here? And she ended up shaking Erin, and the key popped out of her, so that's why she was trapped in there the entire time. So I guess maybe just the mental decay was just kind of a byproduct of, hey, she was in there for so long, it started her mind started breaking apart because her mind had been essentially separated from her body. A good chunk of her mind was separated from her body, because it was enough for her to have her faculties enough to know, warn Kinsey about Dodge and letting her know, oh, Dodge is Lucas. So that's about that, but it's just interesting to know, it was a complete another accident. The question then becomes well, what was she doing there? I guess it's because, Rendell was her girlfriend, and maybe it's just at the time she came there because she was trying to find, maybe it's just trying to, maybe after everything that went down, she just wanted to focus on the good times and stuff like that. So she snuck in there, and then someone just happened to be there cleaning up, and she thought she was going to be in there alone. So she probably wanted to be in a familiar environment and then probably go inside of her memories, her mind, so she could look through her memories and remember the good times before all the tragedies and stuff. Just probably just like Ellie tried to move on with her life and things didn't necessarily work out. That's why she tried bringing Lucas back with the Echo Key. But I think Erin kind of found her own way of dealing with it, and but sadly it just led to an accident of her just getting stuck there. That was my immediate thought, because I feel if you're jumping into your memories, you could have done that anywhere, but maybe she found the head key there. Because I forgot when after everything was dealt with, who got what keys at when Ellie explained. I want to say it was in episode 9. Ellie explained who got what keys. I don't remember who ended up with what. And so I'm trying to remember, did she have it last? Was the head key? Well, I forgot. Because some of those keys were hidden by Mark. Because Mark's the one that hid a lot of the keys. So maybe she found the head keys. I don't know. I could be mistaken. Maybe there's an easier explanation of why she was. That was just my immediate thought when she was there. But obviously, present day, she's moving back she's living with them. Obviously Nina kind of gave the go ahead, it is a bit awkward. Right, you're letting your dead husband's ex-girlfriend stay, but it's she just wants to stay long enough to be able to fully get her a trust fund ready and everything. So what obviously shifted for her was coming up to her room, and then she saw Duncan, and just when she's looking at Duncan, it's just a reminder of right, the last time she saw Duncan probably was a little after, because for her she even says right, in my mind you're still that little kid I remember running around, but he doesn't remember Aaron that much at all. She even asked him, he's right, you don't remember me much, and he's no, don't have much memory of that time, and obviously she knows why they took away his memory, and running into Duncan is what sparked it inside of her to be I need the rest of those. I need all the keys. We need to get rid of them. Because for her, it's the keys are pure evil in her mind. Because it's we the entire time thought we had more control over the keys. We thought no, everything was fine. We were kids and we didn't know the gravity of what we were dealing with. And it's that's what led to the whole situation with Lucas. Because at that time, the keys seduced you, and then Rendell, thinking they would be able to handle whatever comes their way, he became obsessed with the black door, the Omega door, and that ended up turning Lucas into what he became. So it is this thing of like, you can understand where she's coming from. It's like, right, the key, especially because she ends up explaining it to them later on, the origins of the keys, but even more so, like, that doubles down of like what these keys are, what their magic is tied to. It's like, yeah, they're by their nature are evil. We saw what happens when those things possess someone's body. It's like, yeah, they're in the form of keys and everything now, but it's like, no, these things are monsters, and that makes the keys not good either. So, but obviously at the time, she's like, just please trust me. But Kenzie and Tyler are like, no, we're not going to give up the keys, because they wanted to give her time to adjust before like Tyler starts questioning her about like, right, how did you make it so that you guys didn't forget? And it turns out how they did that is they made a new key. Now where that key is, they don't know, because it's not like they found all the keys. Bodhi finds a new key this episode. It ends up, because it's a key that has like key house on it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it's a key house key, but we find out it's like, it's a small world key, because, and I find it fascinating that, because Josh says like, oh, he's just connected. Like, we find out Josh does have a deeper connection to Matheson. Apparently, like, his ancestors are like early people from Matheson, and this is his first time being here. But the fact is, he has a dollhouse, which even Nina, when her and Bodhi were over for the play day, it's like, you have a dollhouse that looks exactly like my house. He's like, I should have probably brought it up, but I thought it'd be pretty weird because we had the rocky beginning, and he even suggesting like, oh, you can have the house if you want to. And I was like, I'm sure Bodhi was pushing more for like, no, let's take it, because it's connected to one of the keys from the house, so like, we should take it. But she's like, no, you get to keep it. But sadly, the key got stuck there, so Jamie's kind of a keeper of that particular key, it seems like, at least for the time being. But they ended up finding out that it's basically a dollhouse version of the real key house, so whatever is done to that dollhouse happens to the actual key house, which is a terrible thing, because the last thing you want is, oh cool, the dollhouse gets destroyed, oh, that means key house is going to get destroyed, which I'm assuming, since they've introduced this, that's going to come back in a big way. But it's like, well, you probably don't want that destroyed, considering all the keys are somewhere in there. But maybe if you destroy that house, you can get rid of like any potential keys that might still be. I'd assume they survived that. I mean, because the moment Rendell died and his ashes, he was cremated, the Omega key was in there amongst his ashes. So, I mean, despite Mark killing himself with the matchstick key, it still ended up surviving. So it's like, those things are pretty tough. Like, it's probably not the easiest thing to destroy one of those keys. It hasn't really come up about that. I mean, but, well, I think they talked about potentially trying, I think maybe they referenced that in season 1, trying to destroy some keys, but they couldn't do it. I don't know. I don't remember. I'm blanking now. I vaguely feel like that conversation came up, but maybe it didn't. Regardless. But yeah, Bodhi got to witness the small world key for himself when he knocked over his dresser and broke his bed. Like, he just picking it up from inside a dollhouse and ended up breaking it. And I love that Jamie put like a gummy bear in there, and now there's a giant gummy bear in Bodhi's room. I even love like Duncan's making dinner, and then like Bodhi's like chewing on part of it in his hand. He's like, oh, thank goodness, I'm starving. I'm like, I love that you're like, I'm starving, even though you're chewing on a piece of like, I mean, I'm curious like how much of it he went through. Who knows if it's still in his room or not, or whether he just like gobbled the whole thing down. But it's just like, whatever the case may be. I just thought that was kind of interesting, but maybe that's just like the kid-like thing of like, oh man, I'm starving, even though I'm over here chewing on this giant piece of gummy bear. You have Nina and Josh going on a date. Obviously, each one kind of talking about, their respective situations. Obviously, Jamie being a lot like Nicole, his deceased wife, saying that it was a car accident. Even Nina talking about the fact is that she still talks to Rendell sometimes, where she's like, oh, it makes me crazy, which she was like, if you're crazy, then I'm crazy. So, but they had a fun time, and sparks are flying between them. I kind of figured as much with Josh's introduction that would end up being the case. If anything, I honestly thought, but I guess he's just a new friend, kind of like Joe kind of filled that role a little bit. Sadly, he ended up, well, not dying, got murdered. But with Daniel, I thought that's potentially what they were going to set up. I thought, like, I don't know, especially rewatching season 1, I kind of felt like that might have been the case. Like they were going to set up maybe a Nina and Daniel thing, but it turns out not the case. So we'll see. I'm already still like, I don't trust that guy. It just seems like he came up with all the perfect excuses of like, oh yeah, when I came here, I found this at a shop. I was like, I feel like that would have, but I guess it's like, right, you'd have to go to an antique shop. It's just the fact that you just happen to find that before that. But I guess like, why would they be, unless they actively went to like an antique shop, they probably wouldn't. It's just, I don't believe it. I think it's horse crap, especially now that he brings up like, oh, his family has ties to Matheson. I'm like, there's something suspicious about you. Like, you're from like some bloodline that knows about Key House and you know about the keys and stuff like that. You're just some other. You're not just some Joe Schmo. You're like somebody of importance that's connected to all of this, who's probably trying to get the keys for himself. Maybe he's known about them for years, or at least his family has, and they've just never had their opportunity to get the keys, and he figured now would be the opportunity. Maybe I don't know, like why he decided to come, like him showing up in Matheson now of all times just seems very peculiar that he just happens to come here. I mean, it's just timing and everything, sure, but it's just like the timing's just weird that you would get here after the Locks did, because like the Locks showing up is like put a lot more of this at, because the keys weren't in active use. Like Rendell never used any of the keys. The first time the keys were used probably in all that time was, well, the whole Lucas situation from Ellie, because she jump-started all of this. But outside of, like, Matheson would be Mark when he killed himself with the matchstick. That's probably, like, the first time that was used, probably but there's a lot of history of, we don't know if they were used out of it. It doesn't seem like Rendell or Mark used it outside of that, but we know that he burned it all up, but Mark was researching a lot of the keys, so who's to say he didn't bump into other people who found out about it as well. Like, I just feel like there's got to be some deeper connection there, but that's just kind of what's going through my mind. At the same time, Eden and Gabe are continuing to try and make their key. They've got to get rid of all the impurities and the mixture, before they get ready to actually make the key. And so Gabe is going to try and do all he can to like sway Kinsey more towards his side, because it's how I got to keep her close. She's special, which even Eden's like, really? Like, are you sure you're not just catching feelings? Because I don't see you doing the same thing with Bodhi or Tyler. And just Gabe glared at her. It's like, yeah, I think it is a thing of, I think when it's all said and done, I think like Gabe, it's once again, it's so fascinating because as Lucas, he was all obsessed about Ellie, but I guess it's like without her fear inside of her, it makes Kinsey a little bit different, and he finds that so interesting. Like, she is a means to an end, but there is a little bit more there, and I'm wondering why is that? I guess he's getting so sucked up in being Gabe, because notice out of, at least like when it was last season, he was flip-flopping between, well, 3 different people. He was Gabe, Dodge, and Lucas, and now he's spending almost exclusively all his time as Gabe. So I think that shifts things up a little bit and made him like, when you're not flipping through 3 different people all the time. I think that's what causes has caused such a shift in him in that regard. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see, like, well, that develop, that whole like his feelings for Kinsey, like, is that like something inside of him growing and changing, or is it just no, it is just pure manipulation? It feels like it's more like Eden was saying, because I've been feeling that way, but maybe that's not the case. Either way, obviously Scott's been stressing out about writing the script for the movie, especially because it's like he wants to get this done, but he's also because he's on a time limit, because like, oh, maybe I'll get into the school, but even if I do get into school, like, I'm having trouble writing this sequel. Like, how am I going to keep up with like a school of other people who are on top of this? So Kinsey offers to help him, and Gabe is like, you know what? I'm going to expedite things. So he gets Eden to sneak into Locke House with the Anywhere key. I keep calling it Locke House. Key House. I don't know why I keep flipping that a lot. Onto Key House with the Anywhere key, so that she can eventually find out she got the music box. And so Gabe sets the whole thing up to make it seem like Scott's losing his like shit, and he like attacks Gabe, and then Scott's like, I don't know, I can't control myself. But then immediately, even though it was all said and done, Kinsey was like, wait, what if he couldn't? The music box. And Gabe's like, what, you're saying someone went in there? Because it's like, she's like, yeah, I haven't found the music box key. And he's like, well, you think someone like snuck into your house and got it? It's like, well, anything's possible, but he's like, damn it. He was hoping like Kinsey would just be, because it's like, it's not in Scott's character. It's completely out of his character. So, but luckily, Eden was able to put it back beforehand. Sadly, Duncan picked up the Anywhere key, so they lost that one big powerful tool in your arsenal of getting around. The cheat code to just getting around is now taken from you now because of that. It's like because of Eden's slip up. I don't know why you got so lax. I guess she didn't think about Duncan. Like, she didn't know Duncan was on his way. So she's like, whatever. Like, why am I stressing? So she took her time. Like, she just had to put the key to, and obviously, he doesn't realize it at the time, but Duncan picked it up for a reason. Like, it sparked something in him, so. But he ends up taking it, so he doesn't really tell anyone that he's got it, because I think the moment he picked it up, he remembers for a second, but he probably just puts it away. It's like, oh, I wonder, I thought I picked something up. Maybe I'm getting crazy. So he probably doesn't even remember that he has the Anywhere key on him right now. So I love that Eden had to sneak out, and she's so pissed, and she's like, I had to walk in my heels, and he's like, it's because of you, Gabe, I lost the Anywhere key. He stood up like he was super pissed, but it's like, whatever, who cares? We've made our own key. Plus, he's put himself in a position where like, now Kinsey has pulled away from Scott more now, because it's like, it seems like you attacked Gabe. Everyone sees it. It's like, you attacked Gabe out of nowhere. Especially because Gabe was saying all the stuff to piss him off, because, like, Gabe incited a lot of stuff because obviously the conversation was like, maybe, like, you should give us an outline, that way we can work on it. But obviously for Scott, it almost felt like, you're kicking me out of the Savinis, like, before I'm even going. Like, I'm still here. They're like, yeah, but you don't want to leave us high and dry when the time comes. It just felt like he was being attacked, and it's like, he wants to do this thing, and it's just like, like, the Savinis is something so important. This is all important to him, and it was all kind of being, like, it's like, I'm still the director, but it was all, like, this is his baby, and it's being taken from him, and it's just like, like, I've had a little bit of writer's block, but I'll get it done. It's just like, just the pressure of it all, like, just being kind of, as Gabe says, he was saying it to be a dick, but it's like, you have 1 foot here with us and then 1 foot in England. And it's like, he's trying to have it all, but, it's not possible. You stretch yourself a little too thin like that. And now that just gave Gabe the opportunity to manipulate you. Granted, there's not much you could do about the music plot. There's no fighting that, but still. Regardless. But Gabe's like, all right, let's put the final touches on a key, which, once again, we're still unclear. I've thrown it out previously what I thought the key they're trying to make might be, but currently we have no idea what the actual key itself is that they're trying to make. So they try to make the key, and then it explodes. I was like, wow, the first key didn't work like that. It's like, now that I also love that he is like, we also need one more ingredient, and slices Eden's hand open. But I was like, well, I guess you can't do it for yourself because you're an Echo, you actually don't bleed. We've seen that time and time again. Like, when he got shot last season, he never bled. Because he's an Echo, and so he's not a living being. Whereas Eden's like, you're a demon, but you're inside of a human vessel. So I had to use her blood. But, it exploded. And just like, I was like, why did that happen? I was like, did you do something? Like, what? Why? Like, when you weren't trying, you made a key without there being an issue. But it's like, he lied to you. He saw through you. He saw through you, you deceitful little bastard. And then in that moment, Gabe got so pissed that his face, like, shifted into a monster. I'm like, okay, so it's there, always there underneath. It's just a matter if they have to probably, like, hold back not to reveal their real faces. But, like, when they lose control like that, or their emotions, and get just super pissed, that's when it comes out, it seems. So it's just, cause I thought it was almost like a natural state. It's just like, no, a state of, like, they have to, like, concentrate probably never to reveal their actual face or something. Like the demons, like, cause his face, like, got those, like, wrinkle marks, and his teeth went black, and, like, his teeth got sharp. So that was just interesting, and just kind of a middle finger to Gabe, and even like, and you also used up the last of the material, so you can't make another key for now, because now, because later on, you had Aaron bringing up the fact is of, like, they made new keys, and so Aaron made new keys, and it's like, well, how did you do that? Now, later on, they find out about the special ingredient about the keys, about them being what they are. So now they know what the active ingredient is. It just means you have to venture down, open the Omega door, and then let some demons fly out, but just make sure no one gets hit and possessed. They're going to get to that point because they're going to be like, right, we need to make our own keys, and it's going to be that situation of, like, once again, it's just the power of seduction, or just like what those keys can do. I mean, it fits very naturally because that's what demons are supposed to do. They kind of, like, seduce you into, like, that dark, and they play into your darkest nature of, like, we can give you whatever you want. And these keys, not necessarily, but they kind of give you access to stuff you normally wouldn't have access to, magic and power. And they kind of give you, and you know, absolute power can corrupt you absolutely. So, like, little by little, like, just like the OG group of, like, Rendell and his friends got, like, obsessed and, like, swayed by these keys. Like, Tyler and Bodhi and Kenzie not as much, but it is just such a casual thing. I'm like, oh, like I said, I brought up in the first episode, oh, let me use the head key, I'll give you this key, oh yeah, cool, blah, 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 you know, and they use them like so casually. It's like, yeah, they just don't think about the danger because they're teenagers. They, you know, especially like when you have magic at your disposal, especially at that age, you're not going to always use it responsibly. We've seen they haven't always used it responsibly, but it's like, especially now, it's like, right, when it's potentially going to be slipping away from you, especially in, Tyler's case, he wants to make sure that Jackie's able to keep her memories of it so that everyone's important to the Locke siblings can get to keep that wonderment and magic without forgetting, just like Rendell, Mark, Ellie, and Aaron. But I do like that when the spider snuck into like the dollhouse and like became a literal problem in the house. I love that. Like, you know, Aaron's running from it and Duncan too, and it's like, oh, he's like, what's our giant spider in our house? And they have to call out Jamie, and she squishes the spider. And that's so interesting. It's like, just because you deactivate the dollhouse, it doesn't do anything. Like, what's there is already there. Like, the power is already activated. So like, even if you deactivate it, it's what's happening inside the house already happens. So you have to like keep the key in and do whatever you need to, because obviously the moment you deactivate it and try to do anything, it won't affect the house until you because I guess even if she killed the spider while it was in the house, it probably would break it so that, like, right, they'd never get rid of the spider. So the house has to be activated so that when you kill the spider, you kill it. And I love that you see that she killed it with like a pencil or something, and then you see her like fingers and a tissue come in to get the spider up. So it's like, yeah, so it's like, cool. And then just like, Duncan's like, what? It's like, just give it a couple seconds. And he doesn't remember. And Aaron tries to like, hey, you remember? And he was like, don't talk to me like you remember me. Like, obviously he's flying a little off the handle, but it's so frustrating because her talking to him like he knows her. It's like, because she does, but it's like everything tied to their adventures and everything. Especially, let's not forget, like, the keys also had like a lot of bonding between Rendell and Duncan, and yeah, they made their own memories after the fact, but it's always got to be harder where like Rendell had these memories of what they were up to, but they had to remove Duncan's at the time, and that ended up being the thing that kind of bothers Erin the most, because she talks about, like, she regrets what they did to Duncan. Yes, it was for the sake of, you know, because Rendell killed Lucas, and he saw that, but it's still like, we should have never done that. She knows what it's like to have those blank spots and you like, you know, kind of be lost like that. So she's like, right, now having gone through what she's gone through, she wants to give Duncan back his memories, because it also turns out Duncan's actually the one who made the key that they could all keep their memories. It's like, he's the one that made it, and after everything, we had to take away his memories. It's like, that's the real jacked up thing of it all. So if they did want to make it or whatever, or probably know where it is, they probably, well, because Mark's the one that hid everything and he's dead, so it's not like he knows, they can't get information about where all the keys are. But Aaron wants to make it up to Duncan to give him back all his memories, even if the bad ones, but it's still like, yeah, those are his memories. So they go into his mind at the end of the episode with the head key, and Tyler goes in with all his memories. So now it makes you wonder, like, what's going to happen the moment Duncan remembers, because when he remembers, he's going to remember everything. And I'm curious, like, how that's going to hit him, because like all these memories are going to come rushing back, and it might be overwhelming. I mean, like, obviously, like, beforehand, just looking at him, it was too much, and it started affecting him. I think it's a combination of just for one, they were just outside looking at the memories, trying to remember something, and it's scratching at his brain, but he can't quite remember. So that, plus he's an adult that's not supposed to be able to remember magic. So I think all those played contributing factors in, like, why he had, like, a massive headache, and it just kind of, like, heavily affected him last season. I think this time it might not be as bad. The sudden rush of all those memories might be. We'll have to wait and see. Probably at the top of the next episode is when they deal with that. But that's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens when he does get his memories back about everything. So I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.